All right. Cool. So we're live. Um, Welcome to this podcast where we're celebrating the death of Yahya Sinwar. Um, but yeah, welcome everybody and thanks for listening. Do you want to start with Yahya Sinwar?
Yeah, it's I feel like I feel like I shouldn't be surprised at these things anymore, but like these last couple of days I've kind of felt like similar, not as like shell shocked as I was on October 8th and 9th, like seeing so many people like just blatantly like endorse and celebrate the murder of innocent people. The shit that we saw those days was like shell shocking. But um, but yeah, the last couple of days just seen so many people just like so shamelessly like portray Sinwar as like some hero, like somebody who should be celebrated. And like these tweets are getting hundreds, no, yeah, hundreds of thousands of likes. Like I mean, we know the main culprits, the anti-Semites that have made themselves so well known ever since October 7th, but yeah, it's just so like there's no words to describe like how insane it is for me to see so many people just openly celebrate a man who was the leader of a death cult, who took innocent people hostage, who blew innocent people's arms off and led one of the worst pogroms, one of the worst massacres since the Holocaust of Jewish people. And just seeing so many people celebrate this man as he was some kind of hero. Like, I don't know. Like, it's just out of my brain just doesn't know how to react to it. Like, I've always thought like most people like were good, and I can't chalk this up anymore to just plain ignorance. Like, there is a good amount of people out there who are pro-Palestinian and who advocate for the Palestinian cause, and they if we should steelman them and seeing so many innocent people get caught up in the war this last year, you understand why people would be pro-Palestinian. You understand why people would be against Israel, especially if they're not super well read on this issue. And I get that, but for the people who are, well read or in the know, like there's no more excuses anymore. Like again, like I don't know. I just don't know. I ran out of words, and I guess we'll just show instead of me talking, like the insanity that's just plaguing
Yeah.
Twitter and so many.
I mean, I understand being fed up with the war. I think it's like what we were talking about with Trip the other day. Like, there's not an insensitivity, but almost like a disconnect in the way that people talk about this war. Like, it's easy for me to just say, "Oh, well, that's collateral damage," right? Something like that. Like if Israel does something and kills a family, or like that video of that guy you guys were talking about that was burned alive.
Yeah.
Um, like it's easy for me to sit on the sidelines, or a world apart, like literally on the other side of the globe, and just talk about it and say, "Well, that's an unfortunate. That's just an unfortunate um, consequence of war." And I do understand the frustration that people feel. I do get that maybe a lot of us commentating on it can seem a little not insensitive, that's not the right word, but maybe disconnected, or it's not entirely real for us. So I get that aspect. And I also get the frustration really that the war just seems to have gone on and on. But at no point throughout this whole process or throughout this whole war does that mean that you can celebrate the life of a literal mass murderer, and not just a mass murderer of Jews, but Palestinians as well. And that's Yahya Sinwar, right? Like he orchestrated October 7th, he orchestrated the massacre, the rape, the kidnapping of Israelis, and a lot of them were at concerts. And, what hasn't been said about October 7th and all the atrocities, but at no point throughout this whole process, even in your frustration, even if you are somewhat anti-Israel or you just want to see the war end, that doesn't excuse the fact. or that doesn't give you, it's not like a natural transition to then subsequently say, Yahya Sinwar was an admirable person or somebody that should be celebrated. Um, and I do think that we should celebrate his death. I do think that his death was long overdue. He died like a dog, thanks to Donald Trump,
Like a dog.
um, like a dog. But yeah, I think we can go through some of these tweets, and I think some of them are obviously inflammatory. Like they're just they're trying to be this way. Like Jackson Hinkle, who's
Yeah, I
I
don't
think he's
believe
like a
anything he says. Like he's just
yeah,
clearly like he has to be like half trolling. Like
yeah,
he's either getting paid or like the shit he puts out. Like I'm like, dude, there's no way this guy believes the shit that he says. But
yeah.
one that wasn't linked in that tweet that I want to start off with because this guy does have like major influence on a lot of people is Andrew Tate. And he posted if you can just go to his Twitter real quick. Um,
You know who was another one that I saw that was kind of surprising was a Instagram guy, the Dan Bilzerian.
No, I know. Yeah, he's
This
like
guy, I was like,
so
what the fuck?
insane. Like,
I
have you
thought
seen his tweets? Like
it
the
just came up random, and I was like,
yeah,
oh,
we can start off with him to begin with, and then we can move on to tape. But just read some of the like it's just fucking straight out of Dare Stormer type shit. Like the amount of like anti-Semitism that is just now just so widely accepted. Look how many likes this guy's
yeah,
tweets are
it's
getting.
crazy.
Like
But when did
100,000 plus likes for the most blatant fucking anti-Semitism. Like you can't write a more Nazi-like tweet thread than the shit that he's saying. But if you want to start off by like saying or
oh, this is the one. Oh, because yeah, anyone fighting the genocidal Israeli terrorist is a hero. R.I.P.
yeah,
This one too, who causes the majority of the world's problems. 16 million Jews. This one got 300,000 votes. I mean, yeah,
and then
it
but
seems insane.
The Jewish media has been attacking what is it, masculinity? If you want to read, it's like super small for them.
Oh, it's small for you?
Well, it's
Uh,
fine. You can just read it.
let me see if, one second. Let me see.
It's not a big deal. You can just read it.
It says the Jewish media. Let me see if I can just, instead of sharing desktop, I'll share this. I don't know if that helped.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. It says the Jewish media has been attacking masculinity because weak men are controllable. If the world had more men like Sinwar, the Israeli terrorist attacks, occupation, and genocide would have been stopped a long time ago.
It's insane, dude. It's
Yeah.
insane. Like, what the fuck? Like, this is just like I feel like the fact that I need to explain to people, like, do I need to explain to people why those words put together are so like you couldn't make up a worse, more insane, like diabolical tweet than that. Like, it's just
It's the problem for me is like, where do
where
you
do
even start?
yeah,
Like,
where
where
do
do
you
you,
even start? Where do you even start with this type of shit?
yeah,
Like the Jewish media, masculinity. If we had more men like Sinwar, like people are again, like I don't know. I always had that like that default to always just assume the best in people and assume ignorance rather than malice. But I've reached a point in my life where there's just like there's the only rational explanation is malice. Like there's
yeah.
no way that this guy Dan Bilzerian like doesn't know what like is it really that these people really convince themselves of the most it's like you have to how insane do you have to be to convince yourself that somebody like Sinwar is a hero? Like again, we can talk about the Israeli injustices, or we can talk about the conflict. We can talk about everything Israel's done wrong in the war. We can talk about all that, but to to then glorify a person like Sinwar, who's on the level of Osama bin Laden and Hitler in terms of moral depravity, is just like I don't know. Like I don't know. And again, these are you're talking about hundreds of thousands of likes. Like imagine being Jewish seeing this type of shit. Like we're on the outside. We live in America. Like we're good. But imagine being an Israeli or a Jewish person and seeing so much just blatant, direct bigotry. And like we're not ones to throw those words, lightly. We're not like, oh, you're a bigot or you're a racist or you're anti-Semitic. Like what other word would you use to categorize this type of it's just I don't know, man. It's insane.
Yeah. I usually I can find some like nugget of truth or like something in somebody's argument where I'm like, I can see where you're coming from. But with these ones, these are just like you said, it's just like the protocols of the elders of Zion or something like that. Like just straight up just
Yeah.
anti-Semitism where you're just like, there's nothing for me to work with here. There's not even an argument. It's just carte blanche racism, whatever version that wants to take. But I mean, looking a little bit more closely into these tweets, like this one that says, who causes the majority of the world's problems? Is it Christians, Muslims, Hindus, or Jews? And like, I mean, obviously this is going to be skewed to his following, but it's still concerning that 75% of the 300,000 people that voted believe that 16 million of the world's Jews cause the majority of the world's problems. Like, what problems are we talking about here? This has to be like, obviously, I mean, I'm a little bit more biased, but if we're just talking about straight up terrorism and war and conflict, like most of that is coming not from most of the Muslims, but that's coming predominantly coming out of the Islamic faith.
Yeah.
So, and then again, here with the anyone fighting the genocidal Israeli terrorists, like classifying the Israelis as genocidal, just an outright lie. There's not a genocide that's happening. There's a lot of death that's happening, and I don't know if we were recording at the time, but as we previously talked about, like that's sad. That's heartbreaking. You don't want to see people suffer in this war or in any war, but it was Sinwar that that
Start of the war.
instigated this war. Like,
Yeah.
what do you want them to do? And then again, in it's been over a year, and I haven't seen any argument for because it always boils down to this: like, what does Israel do? What can Israel live with? And the answer's always, well, they have to take out Hamas. Like, they can't live like this. And then I haven't seen any other response. I haven't seen any other arguments. I've seen arguments for special forces and yada yada yada, and that's great. And we're seeing the benefits now of of special forces because you can implement now that you have ground control, you can implement that measure of special forces. But this took a year of bombing, of air campaigns, of boots on the ground. That now you are seeing a lot of these campaigns bear fruit, and but that takes a long time, as we've seen.
Yeah, I mean,
And
I think that there's like two categories that we need to like distinguish. There's like the rational, reasonable pro-Palestinian position that is very debatable. We happen to come on one side of it, but you can have that debate. And, reasonable people can disagree, but this type of the shit that we're seeing right here, and if you want to click out of this and go into the other tweet thread where you're just talking about just like I remember seeing like Kyle Kalinski's like secular talk, this guy on YouTube was pretty popular, but he's always talking about it in his videos how, when talking about the campus protesters or when talking about pro-Palestinian voices, he's always quick to say that no, we have to steel man. They're protesting the genocide, quote unquote, in Gaza. They're not pro-Palestinian. I mean, they're not pro-Hamas, they're not pro-Hezbollah, they're pro ending the genocide. And it's just in yes, you may be in the ideal world or the person that, they may be doing that for their own sake, but seeing this type of shit where you're talking about like not that many people use Twitter, or the people that don't use Twitter, when you're talking about 50,000 likes, 100,000 likes, like that is astronomical level of likes and views and agreement with the most blatant anti-Semitic, Jews run everything, Nazi type rhetoric. And it's just exploded ever since October 7th. And who knows what it is about the Jewish people that makes people go so fucking insane and go crazy, but it's just insane that we're literally living through another moment of time. Like you again, you don't want to make these comparisons, but there's no other way to come down. Like this is a 1940s, late 1930s type of environment where you're just seeing the celebration of people who murder Jews for sport. And this is what we're seeing. Like it's not just Dan Bilzerian. Andrew Tate's another super famous person. And he tweeted a couple days ago, um,
I was going to see if I can find it.
yeah, he tweeted about how oh,
What, what are the keywords or what is it?
well, just put Andrew Tate, Yahya Sinwar. But I have it right here. I'll just read it while you find it. I can only pray for a death as heroic as Yahya Sinwar, brave, defiant in the face of evil, and dedicated to his life's purpose. He deserves eternal rest. He earned it. And it's just, again, like, what are we talking about here? You're talking about a man who like again, we shouldn't even have to explain the person that Yahya Sinwar was. Like if you're a person that's interested in this conflict, like it's just basic knowledge that this man is a terrorist, a mass murderer. Like he took people he had people following him, hostages following him around. And when he sensed that the IDF was getting closer, he killed five of them just in bare fucking like imagine the level of like how much of a fuck brain do you have to
Not just
celebrate?
hostages, children, like
Yeah,
children.
children. How much of a fucked brain do you have to celebrate a man who takes people hostage, who fucking kidnaps them and tortures them inside of fucking tunnels for months and months on end? Like, where are we in our society that this is celebrated, that this is again, this is why it's such a like it reminds me of the feeling that I had right after October 7th when you started seeing all these people come out and just celebrate the what happened, the terrorist attack of October 7th as if it was something good. And I'm having that moment here again because it's just like reminded me of those days where it's just like, what the like I'm just with my mouth open, like, what is going on here? And it's not just a random few people, it's a fuck ton of people that are agreeing with this shit. And yeah, it's just it's insane. It's and it's the most ironic part of all of this is like I think there's two things that I want to say real quick. The most ironic part about all this is the fact that these people will fucking cry wolf at the smallest one fucking terrorist gets wrong or oh maybe he was a terrorist member. Oh my God, Israel. Oh my fucking God. They fucking are the worst. They're like, oh my God, how could Israel do this? But then when Hamas tortures people, shoots people in the vagina, shoots people in the breast. Like, oh, that's fine. Like, well, you're not. There's no consistency at all, and that's one thing. And then another thing is, I think what's happening with a lot of these people, like Andrew Tate, or like Dan Bilzerian, or like Sneeko. I don't know if you've heard of them, or a lot of the Muslim societies. Like the Islamic religion is a very like manly, masculine type of religion where the men pretty much run shit and women have to be covered up and it's a masochist, it's a very man-centered type of religion. And I think what's happening right now is a lot of Muslims are having to come up with like rationalizations. They're trying to rationalize the fact that the IDF and Israel is just like kicking the ass out of fucking, Gaza and kicking the ass out of Hamas. And they're just taking out all these terrorist leaders like boom, Nasrallah, boom, Yahya Sinwar, and they're just kicking ass right now. And for a lot of people, especially in the Islamic faith, not all, hashtag not all, but for a lot of people, I think that it's like yeah, they're having to come up with it's emasculating for them because they're being exposed as as especially Hamas. Like Hamas has just gotten their ass kicked and then we're all the supposed Islamic countries that oh the Palestinians like no they're just allowing them because they know a lot of these Sunni countries are just like Israel, do your thing. But Iran, the same shit. It's all just bark. They're all just been barking this whole time, and they're all being exposed. And I think that that plays a factor in it as well. They're just trying to fucking come up with all these like, oh well, he died as like a hero. It's like, bro, he got his shit kicked in. You see that picture? Where he looks like a fucking rat with his brain
Yeah,
off. Like
his
then they're trying to,
fingers are
oh
blown off and like
yeah, it's like, oh, he's a hero. And the last thing is this is like the saddest thing out of all is that if they keep this type of rhetoric up, if they keep trying to hype up people like Yahya Sinwar, all that's doing is just condemning Palestinians to another generation of fucking horror, terror, and Israel having to come back and fuck their shit up again because it's this fighting type of instinct that just won't die and that hasn't died in the last 75 years that, this conflict, or even more that this conflict has raged on. It's just Palestinians have always been about fight, fight, fight. We're going to defeat the great Satan. We're going to defeat Israel. And look where that has led them. And that's the saddest thing about all of this is that if that type of mentality persists, it's just going to condemn the Palestinians to another fuck generation. And it's sad. It's
yeah.
sad because the innocent Palestinian kids are the ones that suffer.
I
And
mean, I don't want to be super pessimistic, but I mean, yeah, they're kind of condemning themselves. Like you would hope for this kind of like reform mentality to come out of
yeah,
Gaza and the West Bank, and to see the more liberal more liberal minded Palestinians come out of the woodworks and really kind of take back their country and not want to fight Israel. And that's not to say they don't exist, but I mean, the sad truth is that these organizations like Hamas and these terrorists like Yahya Sinwar, they do have wide support, like 60, 70% support
yeah,
uh, in Gaza and in the West Bank. So yeah, unfortunately, you're right. Like these people are condemning them. These people like Andrew Tate, Dan Bilzerian, by just kind of egging them on and popularizing these people even more. But yeah, Gazans are doing it to themselves as well. But yeah, I can just keep going through this. Oh
yeah.
man,
It's
it's
just
gonna be tough.
it's just sad. It's just I don't
Syrian girl is fucking insane. Like
know. Oh
I don't
God,
even
yeah,
know what the fuck.
yeah. It's
Yeah,
just
Owen Jones is more fucking stupid. Like, yeah, I mean, I don't know.
yeah. I mean,
My hunch is killing. Isn't this guy? Doesn't he live in Britain? He's like a.
yeah, yeah.
I forgot
There's
his
two
story.
things. Well, let's just read the tweet. It says, "My hunch is killing Sinwar gives more legitimacy to Hamas with the Palestinians. Moreover, when was the last time a Western leader either fought or was killed on the battlefield?" And look, I do want to say this though. Credit where credit is due. Sinwar did die, you know, fighting back, whatever that's worth. He did die in battle, quote unquote, and he did, die. But I think this only highlights the mentality that people like us attribute towards people like Sinwar. Sinwar viewed his battle with Israel as a spiritual, religious type of battle, right? This is a man who was indoctrinated in the Islamist, fundamentalist faith, and he viewed Israel as the great Satan, and he viewed his battle against them as a spiritual one, and as one where he was fighting for God, for his God, for Allah. And so that type of mentality, right? You go into battle and you feel like you have God on your side. You're invincible in a way because even if you get murdered or even if you get killed, you become a martyr, which is one of the best things, especially according to Islam. And so yeah, it's not surprising that Sinwar, the way that he died the way that he died, especially for people like us that attribute this type of mentality towards people like him. He wasn't a coward, and a lot of Islamists, jihadists are not cowards. Whatever word you want to throw onto that. It's a loaded term, but they're not cowards in the sense that they really believe what they believe. They really believe that they have Allah and God, whatever word you want to attribute to the higher being on their side. And this gives them like an added boost because they feel like, again, even if like death isn't a problem to them. And this is one of the biggest things that so many people that are not well read on this subject are just completely miss, right? They completely miss the religious aspect and how big of a role it plays in this conflict. And yeah, it's just
Well, I think two
sad.
things. One, the religious aspect is one thing that a lot of people miss, and it confuses them when they start to think of Palestine and Israel as this kind of land battle. Like they're just, oh, well, the Palestinians just have grievances because historically Palestinians lived in this little area, and then Israelis started to emigrate here and started slowly taking over the land. And these are just historical grievances, right? Like that's why Palestinians are so mad. It's because they're fighting this battle that has been going on for 70 odd years or something like that because they think Israelis took their land. So the religious part is definitely true. A lot of people just miss it. A lot of people just don't understand that Hamas and a lot of these jihadi organizations like Iran that is funding groups like Hezbollah and also Hamas, they're fighting a holy war. They're fighting a religious war against the Jews. So that's definitely something that a lot of people miss. I think with that though, I would probably push back on that because for me, that's one of my main grievances against religion. I think it's one of the worst things about religion because people feel they have everything is correct on their side. They have this, kind of ineffable or not ineffable, but they have this just this feeling, this self-assured feeling that they can't do anything wrong because they have God on their side. And this this kind of like unshakable feeling, this that you're doing the Lord's work, that you're doing something bigger than you, that you're part of a bigger purpose. Like that for me is one of the worst things about religion. It doesn't leave room for self-reflection. It doesn't leave room for debate. It doesn't leave room for what if I am wrong, right? That's one of the things that I often grapple with myself. Is like, what if I'm wrong? And even though these people, I look at them and I'm like, these people are fucking stupid. Like, there's always that little bit of doubt in my head. Like, what if I'm missing something? Like, what if I'm just not viewing this from all sides, right? And I don't view it as necessarily a feature to have just just this unflappable belief like there's nothing's going to shake me, like I just have this courage and this belief that God is with me. Like that to me is a bug, not a feature of religion.
Yeah.
But yeah, to go back to um the religious aspect, yeah, that's definitely true. A lot of people just don't understand that this is a religious conflict, at the root of it. And if one side like Israel wasn't being so ganged up on, there would be a good argument against Israel just being a Jewish state versus a state for Jews. And I'm not necessarily on the side of this pro-Jewish state, carte blanche. There's criticisms there, but a lot of people do just miss the fact that Muslims are fighting a jihad, they're fighting a holy war against Israel, and it's just down to what's found in the Quran.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean there's a lot of ways I could take that. I think the a quick thought on what you were saying on the dogmatic aspect or the unshakable faith, like like obviously it's a bad thing when we see the bad thing with people like Sinwar, people like Osama bin Laden, where they think they're, you know, on God's side. And it's a bad thing, but it can also be a good thing. You know, there's a lot of people that, you know, have that like Jesus Christ, like come to Jesus moment. And like, you know, it inspires a lot of people. You know, a lot of athletes, like a majority of athletes, like are always praising God and, you know, must feel nice to think that, you know, well, God's always got my back no matter what happens. And and yeah, I mean, but at the end of the day, you know, like it is what it is. But
Yeah,
yeah,
but I wish there was a way to separate that because yeah, I mean, obviously I know a lot of people that are religious and that part is nice. You feel like you're part of something bigger, that you're given your life has, this kind of this purpose, and that somebody is watching over you, right? That God, even though he might test you sometimes, like he has your back and that he's watching out for you, or that you're carrying out his work like that. I can see the appeal of that. I definitely can, like that. I'm not immune to that, but there's it's the part where you get to stuff like this. Like how far does it go? And with
Yeah.
Islam, it's obvious that this is just the worst case scenario of what faith is. Like these people, I mean, it hasn't happened here, but if you look at videos from the Intifada or if you look at videos from ISIS, like these people are blowing themselves up for
Yeah.
their faith. Like they're murdering other people because they think what they're doing is right. Like, if you go back to October 7th, there's people that were murdering Jews and calling their parents, and the parents were celebrating, right?
Yeah.
They were calling them and saying, "I just killed Jews," and I'm
Yeah.
calling you from their cell phone. So yeah, no, I'm definitely not immune to it. I definitely see the appeal to it. It's nice to, and I've definitely felt that to some extent, not with religion, but when I was in the Air Force, it's definitely something to it's a very powerful feeling when you are part of a group, when you're giving yourself up, when you kind of sacrifice the individual for the betterment of the group, right?
Yeah.
You're part of a squad, you're part of a flight. Like those 50 people that I went through with boot camp, like at that time they were your closest brothers, like they were the closest people, and you would do anything for them. So I know the appeal, and if you listen to like Graham Wood, that really good book on ISIS. I forgot the name of it.
The way of the stranger.
Yeah, The Way of the Stranger. But he interviews a lot of these guys, and it's kind of the same thing, right? Like the recruiters are recruiting people that are a little bit lost, maybe don't have a good sense of direction, and they recruit them into these groups, and they give them this sense of feeling, this sense of like, well, I'm part of something bigger, and so yeah, it's a nice feeling, but Islam is like I said, it's like the worst iteration of that. Like especially this like super extreme violent version that we're seeing manifest over the last, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 years, whatever it is. But
Yeah.
um
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I don't know. I agree. I don't know if you want to put the Ta-Nehisi. I think we kind of showed people the insanity that is Twitter right now, and the amount of insane shit that's on.
Yeah, I feel like I always have this like debate where I feel like we view the stuff that's on Twitter and we view the craziness that is a lot of these anti-Semites, and then you bring it to just the conversation that you're having with normal people or friends, and they don't quite understand the context of
Yeah,
what is the crazy shit that you've been looking at. And you're
yeah,
kind of having like this dual debate where you're like debating with the people that you saw on Twitter, but these
yeah,
people have no idea like the craziness that they're seeing. They're just like, oh, well, I'm kind of anti-Israel continuing the war. Like I want the war to
yeah.
end.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Um,
saying. There's like a lot of normies that just, they see the news, they see the kids getting blown up, they see innocent children suffering, and any rational person sees that and says, stop that. I
yeah,
want that to stop. And they look at Israel, they're the ones bombing, so stop. And so yeah, if you're not like super well read on this issue, it makes complete sense. And I don't begrudge or fault people for thinking these things, but the
yeah,
the the conflict is is just way more complicated than that. And
yeah,
people want to reduce it to, oh well, kids dying is bad and therefore Israel's evil. And it's just like you're not you're not in you just don't
yeah,
want to deal with the nuance that comes with the reality of having to face a death cult that purposely hides behind their own civilians. And yeah, I mean, it's just people
yeah,
want to make it simple when it's not simple. These are
yeah,
some of the most morally complicated questions possible, you know.
yeah.
And, you know,
And yeah, no, I get totally understand the sentiment of wanting to end the conflict because I was thinking about this the other day during that conversation that you and Trip were having about where he was just saying, I'm tired of both sides. And I thought, like, what if this happened to me? Like, what if this happened
yeah,
to us? What if some TJ cartel goes across the border, murders and rapes a bunch of people at Cross, and then goes back to TJ, and then the US starts dropping bombs on TJ, and let's say they hit one of our family or dad or something like that. Like,
yeah,
I'd be pretty pissed. I'd be pretty mad.
yeah,
But I hope that I would be able to contextualize it and
It's just so
put the
much more
blame.
complicated than that because, even that sounds like, well, no, that's still like I would still not want to justify that, because, well, you should hit the terrorist and the terrorist alone. But it's not that simple because, even in that scenario, this is why this conflict is so complicated. And this is why I don't, fault people for not understanding where Israel's coming from. And this is why, Israel is in such a catch-22 position. But it's not that simple because it's even more complicated. The fact that we know that so many of the Palestinian people, of the Gazan people, support Hamas and support what happened and are collaborating with Hamas. Not just that, but the way Hamas built the battlefield, the way they made it impossible to get to them without hitting their civilians first. And on top of that, the reality that a lot of these people, and especially for people like Sinwar, like they don't view death the way we view death. And this is another super complicated thing that a lot of people just goes over their heads. But if you really believe in heaven, if you really believe in Allah, if you really believe in the afterlife, if you really believe in such a thing as martyrdom, you start viewing those deaths of your own people in a different way. And this is what makes even crazier people celebrating Sinwar's death, is because he wrote himself, he said it himself that he welcomes, the shaheeds and the Gazan civilians dying in for the cause of Allah and for the cause of Gaza. And so yeah, it's even more complicated than Israel just randomly deciding to bomb a place where, other civilians might be. It's just
Yeah.
yeah, it's just
Yeah. There's a really good book by I'm gonna butcher his name, Thanasis Cambasis. I don't know if you've ever read it. Um Cambasis. It's called A Privilege to Die, if anybody wants to read it. Um, but this one, it's a little bit outdated, obviously. It was written 13 years ago, but it predominantly focuses on Nasrallah
mhm,
and Hezbollah, but it talks a lot about martyrdom and how deeply rooted martyrdom is in not just in that movement within Hezbollah, but also in Hamas. But it's a really good book, and just to kind of
I'll look it up.
reiterate the point that you were making about martyrdom, that a lot of people miss. Like they don't view, like you said, they don't view death the same way. For them, death is a privilege, and the privilege to be martyred is something that a lot of people miss.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you want to just play those clips real quick, and then we can get on
Yeah.
to something else because we have kind of talked about
Okay.
Israel a lot on this.
Let's see.
Yeah, let's play
Pull
the
up.
clips. So this is a Ta-Nehisi Coates talking about Israel or how he wouldn't or
This out loud, but I think about it a lot. Were I 20 years old, born into Gaza, which is a giant open air jail. And what I mean by that is if my father is a fisherman and he goes too far out into the sea, he might get shot
Yeah.
by somebody off of, the side of Israeli boats. If my mother picks the olive trees and she gets too close to the wall, she might be shot. If my little sister has, cancer and she needs treatment because there are no, facilities to do that in Gaza and I don't get the right permits, she might die. And I grow up under that oppression and that poverty and the wall comes down. Am I also strong enough or even constructed in such a way where I say, this is too far? I don't know that I am.
Hmm.
I don't know that I am.
I mean, yeah, I don't know what the fuck he's trying to say here. Like, okay, I can understand. This is like such a simplification of what happened on October 7th. Like, it wasn't as if Hamas and Palestinians afterward just came in and attacked military outposts and grabbed a bunch of IDF soldiers and took them back. Okay, fine. You know what? If that actually happened, that would be one argument. And you said, Hamas legitimately attacked military outposts. Hamas is still in an open war with Israel. whatever, you can just leave it. But that's not what happened. They went to a festival and murdered 300 some odd people at a fucking rave while they were rolling on MDMA and on mushrooms. Like these people were celebrating peace. They went and murdered them. They went and kidnapped them. They went and raped them. These people went into the kibbutz or people's homes, murdered children. They murdered people, like families, in front of each other. Like they murdered mothers and fathers in front of children. Like, what is it about this quote unquote civil protest that you would agree with or that you wouldn't be strong enough to do? Like, what the fuck is he talking about? That's not at all what happened on October 7th. Like, the people that were working, the Palestinians that were working in Israel helped Hamas map the kibbutz. They helped Hamas map the areas that they would go and attack. Like, think about that mentality. Like, how the fuck are Israelis ever going to allow Palestinians back into their society? I would never, ever. Like, you want to talk about the immigrant crisis here that we're having, where there's supposed Venezuelan gangs coming in and knocking people's doors down. Like, imagine if that happened. Imagine if you had a wide scale invasion and you found out that the people that you were supposedly helping, like, helped to plan that. Like, that's insane. Like, I really don't understand what it is that he's talking about. October 7th wasn't a civil protest. It was an invasion, and it was massive mass rape, like mass murder, like mass kidnapping. Like, I don't know what else. What are the things you need to throw at it? But it
I
wasn't a
think
fucking
I
civil
think to
protest.
the most important thing is we try to, I mean, and everything you said was right, obviously, but let's try to like steel man and see where like people that make these type of arguments are coming from. And basically, in a nutshell, if you want to steel man the argument is that if you grow up being a victim, if you grow up oppressed and you see the oppressor, right? You see the oppressor oppressing you, you see the injustice, and you see yeah, we can agree that in some aspects Israel does go too far, like not allowing the boats to go out a certain radius, which means that, certain fishermen can't catch, their fish. If you're like a kid of a fisherman and the dad can't fish properly, obviously that's gonna piss you off. And let's just take it for as if it's true, all the things that he said. You grow up as a kid, being harassed in this open air prison by Israel, and you turn 18 or you turn 19. That's then the argument is that because of all that bent up rage, because of all that oppression that you experienced, that is then going to lead you to want to go and murder and rape and torture children, take them hostage, innocent people. That is the logical jump. And from a person that's not completely, you could see that argument. You could see that argument that okay, you can maybe make that jump. But I think that for a lot of people, what they fail to miss is that one, the the reality of Gaza on the ground is that this idea that it's a concentration camp, this idea that it's all of that, it's just not true. But again, let's take it for what it is. Let's just steelman it. We have so many examples of people being victims, people being oppressed in way worse conditions than the Palestinians are right now. But let's just take it for granted. Let's just say everything they say about Palestine is true. Let's say that it's an open air prison and that, it's a occupation. Let's just say it's true. You can, even at its worst, that is nothing comparable, nothing at all even close to comparable to the conditions of the concentration camps in Warsaw, in Poland, the the long history of oppression, of victimhood, of so many countless other examples where you never see this type of behavior. It's not a pattern that we see. And again, you can, like you were explaining, you can see, you can rationalize, okay, well, yeah, you can, hypothesize people breaking out and then going off and killing the oppressor, killing in a bent up rage. But what then doesn't make sense is that you start raping, then you start torturing, then you start killing for the sake of killing innocent people at like for fun, for sport. You call your parents, you're like, I just killed the Jew. I just killed the Jew. Like this is a fun thing to do. That is the step that doesn't make logical sense. And that's why it's wrong. And so yeah, it's just
I just watched a show it's called We Were the Lucky Ones, but a lot of the show was about a Jewish family that and their experiences throughout the Holocaust, but part of it dealt with the Warsaw Ghetto uprising. And I mean, I could be wrong. I'm not 100%. I'm not a historian on the Warsaw Ghetto, but if a bunch of Polish people, a bunch of Polish Jews broke out of the Warsaw Ghetto and during the uprising murdered a bunch of, Hitler youths at a park, I'm pretty sure we would hear about it. I'm pretty sure we would all
no.
widely condemn the murdering of Hitler youths. There's a
Or
bunch of
not
10
even
year old,
Hitler, just
8-year-old
young
kids. Like,
Germans or Germans, like
yeah.
just
But even
Germans,
just go
period.
a step further and like, okay, that they did kill like outright Nazi youths, like Hitler youths that were 8 or 9 or 10 years old. Like, but no one would look at that and be like, wow, that was justified. Like even all of the atrocities that the Jewish people were experiencing in Warsaw at the time. Like, and yeah, even it would be worse if it was just, just little German blonde haired children. Like nobody wouldn't, we wouldn't just say, oh, well, it's just, something that the Jews had to do. Like we would condemn it and rightly so.
But I
And
think
so
to Steelman Ta-Nehisi, I don't think he's not, if you were to ask him, he's not justifying it. He's just empathizing with, because in his head he views the Palestinians as the Warsaw ghetto Jews. That's how he views the Palestinians. He sees what thinks and what he believes is that. And so that's what he's saying. He's not justifying it. He's just saying that I empathize with that type of attitude that if I were to grow up a victim to this more powerful entity that oppressed my family and that caused all this harm, then I would understand, having all that pent up anger and then just going on a murder spree. And again, you can empathize with it. Yes, in certain extreme scenarios, you can empathize with the person that's the perfect thought experiment. This person went through all this shit, and yes, maybe he did go on a rampage. Okay, that's fine. But to say that this is a majority of what's happening in Palestine, or to say that this is just a regular symptom of human beings, one, it's not taking into account the will, free will of a person. At the end of the day, you still have the ability to choose to murder innocent people and to not take hostage innocent people. You still have that ability. And then another thing is just I'm reminded of all those videos that we saw on October 7th of Hamas murdering not just Jewish people, not just the oppressor, not just the military, not just the civilians, but African study students that were studying abroad in Israel. And this kid, this poor kid who was like in his 20s, he was clearly from Africa, clearly not a Jew, clearly nothing to do with anything. And he's like super scared, and they murder him in cold blood. And then they beheaded a Thai worker yeah, he was from Thailand, and they freaking beheaded him with a hoe. And it's just again, you could understand in his little hypothetical that he wants to play. Okay, maybe he's right. Yeah, maybe if you become a victim, but to then just say it turns you into a psychopathic murderer who's just like gleeful, like this is not the normal state of human beings. Human
to
beings.
me,
Go ahead.
that's just like that. To me, that's just like justifying the Columbine shooting. Like these two kids were bullied. These two kids obviously had a very rough time in high school. And yeah, you could see why they would do something like that, but I don't know what it speaks to,
Yeah,
what it says more about the fact that they did something like this, that they could do something like this. Like there's something rotten at the core of Palestinian society that most of them view Jewish people as such an enemy, right? As like this is I the only way through this is to kill them, and we're going to celebrate in the streets when we do kill them. And yeah,
This is the good.
oh sorry, I was just going to say I do see the point. I can empathize. I can even empathize with the Columbine shooters. I can see, getting bullied in school fucking sucks. Like we all go through it. We all get bullied. We all get pushed around. It fucking sucks. But at no point was I like, at
Mm.
no point, even if you did think about it, like I don't know, like it at no point is this justified. Like I don't know. I guess ultimately I'm confused about what point he's trying to make. Like, yeah, we can empathize, but then where does that leave us? We of course we can empathize. We understand that people get mad. Of course, any of us would get mad, but like to subsequently then not condemn the actions, like to me, it's a misstep. It's a missed opportunity. Like, yeah, you can get mad, that's fine, but you have to be an adult in this situation, and you
But
violence.
again, to Steelman Ta-Nehisi, I think he does condemn it. He's just simply saying, let's empathize it. But, you know, let's not play hypotheticals anymore, though. Let's look at the reality. The reality of the situation is to compare Gaza to what happened during the concentration camps or what happened during the Holocaust or what happened to anything other else. Like, again, yes, we can empathize with the Palestinians, and there is a lot of things that Israel has done wrong. They have gone too far in their occupation. There's certain things where it's just like, why like the cookie thing? Like, why doesn't Israel allow certain aspects to go into to Gaza and certain things not? There's clearly things we can criticize Israel over, and we can be adults about it. We don't have a bone to pick. I mean, we don't have a dog in this fight, and we can criticize Israel, if it seems fit. But to compare it to something where these fucking super oppressed victims, like the example that he gave of the hospital, where he said that, if I wasn't able to take my daughter or my sister to the hospital as a kid, like that thought is so perverse because of the example that you said earlier, Jerry, is we know that the people that were responsible for for the attack, for the people that were involved in the October 7th attack, the people that helped Hamas used to be workers in the kibbutzim right next to the Gaza border in Israel. And these people were being helped by Israelis. This is one of the most fucked up aspects of the whole October 7th horror show is that most of the people murdered on that day were peaceniks. They were people that wanted to they still believed in this two-state solution. They still believed in the Palestinian people. They still believed in peace, and they would drive Palestinian people from Gaza into Israel, and what they would drive them to the hospital themselves. And one of these men got taken hostage. He was a personal driver. He would go into Gaza and he would help these people out, and they betrayed him. And and again, it's just so perverse and so disgusting because if he would know anything and if he would talk to anybody else other than just pro-Palestinian voices, he would hear these other perspectives and he would see that it's not this just like, oh, evil Israel, Jews evil, and oh, let's just oppress fucking Palestinians today. Like it's not that. Like we have so many examples that prove otherwise and so again, so many of the people murdered on that day were the most pro-peace people in Israel left. Most of the people, most of that idea died after the Second Intifada, but the people that still persisted in those ideas, that still wanted to help Palestinians by any means, lived in those kibbutzim, and what did they get out of it? They were murdered in fucking cold blood by Hamas and yeah, it's
Yeah, I
just
think it's one of the bigger misconceptions I think people had prior to October 7th, and even when they're discussing this conflict, is that they think that the border with Gaza and Israel was closed. Like it wasn't a closed border. Like a lot of Gazans would go into Israel to, go to hospitals, doctor's visits, like you name it. They went there for different services that they needed. And it's not a closed border. Like what Ta-Nehisi Coates is suggesting is like this open air prison. Like it's a yes, there is a blockade. on uh, on Gazan imports, especially when you're talking about the sea. But there's reasons for that, like you mentioned, the intifadas and the smuggling of weaponry and things like that. So there's reasons behind it, and yeah, it's not ideal, but I think that's one of the bigger misconceptions is that there's this closed border between Israel and Gaza. It's not an open border, obviously, but it wasn't as if people weren't moving in and out of the country. Um, and then I don't know if it's worth mentioning, but maybe we can go to Trevor Noah too. But I think one of the biggest things that I don't see from people like him is that, Gaza shares a border with Egypt as well. And that's a very close border. Like that's a very, very tight border. I don't think anything really moves through that border. And I mean, is Ta-Nehisi Coates also suggesting that Egypt is the oppressor here? Like, is Ta-Nehisi Coates also suggesting that Gazans can go into Cairo and start murdering the same way, and that we should empathize? Like that's one of the things that we all miss, or that I miss a lot of these people that I don't see from them, is that where's the outrage towards Egypt? It doesn't exist. Like it's all just centered on Israel, and there's no reason why really Egypt and Gaza can't have open borders. Like, but the dirty little secret of the Middle East is that nobody wants Palestinians in their countries. Like nobody, none of the Middle Eastern Muslim countries want Palestinians in their country, and that's why Egypt has a closed border. That's why Syrians treat Gazans or sorry, not just Gaza, but Palestinians pretty terribly. Like you look around at different Middle Eastern countries, and Palestinians are treated pretty poorly, but most of the outrage or all of the outrage is only you know head or it's only towards Israel.
Yeah. Yeah, one last point on that is watch type in put Hamas atrocities and then put in posted just 2 weeks before October 7th on Twitter. And again, this is why when
Or
people
search
say,
for what?
huh? Oh, just
Search
yeah,
what?
Hamas atrocities and then put put posted just 2 weeks before October 7th. And again, this is what we're talking about when people say that I mean, Gaza is a fucking concentration camp. Like, look how fucking ridiculous you sound when people.
Sorry.
No, yeah, I mean, it's just we're seeing a video of a fucking luxury hotel, luxury shopping center, people free to do whatever the fuck they want. It just looks like a beachside, Gaza could be such a beautiful place. It could be a freaking Singapore. It could be it's right next to the ocean, and it's just sad. It's just sad that one that people try to say that that is a fucking concentration camp. Like, just picture like again, this is why I don't take seriously people like Norman Finkelstein. Like, how when you start saying shit like concentration camp and you put the picture of we've all seen the horrific pictures of the Holocaust of these people fucking bare boned with tattoos to mark them, and they're like all just laying on those cottages like ready to die, and then that's concentration camp. And then if Norman Finkelstein comes in and I'm going to compare that to the video that we just saw. And it's just like how insane do you have to be to think these things? How retarded do you have to be to think these things? And that's what people want to do. They want to say, "Oh, that's a concentration camp. This fucking 6 million dead Jews." And then the video that we just saw. It's just so fucking retarded. That's why
Yeah.
oh my God, dude. People are just
Yeah.
so dumb, dude. I don't know.
Yeah, I remember these videos coming out of like what life in Gaza was actually like, before the war. And yeah, there was, beachside resorts. And that's not to say that obviously Gaza isn't without
Yeah,
its economic hardships. It's not to say that a lot of the men are unemployed there, because, it is hard to find employment there.
yeah,
But yeah, like you said, to compare it to a concentration camp, like one other point on this concentration camp here, when you think concentration camp, like you said, you think emaciated bodies, like you think skin and bones, and these people just clinging on to life by whatever, you know, last vestige of life that they have, life force that they have. But one stat that I read was, I think like maybe 60 to 70% of Palestinians are obese, or they classify as obese. And like that, is that really a concentration camp? Like when you have two-thirds of the population classified as obese, like that doesn't make sense to me. right?
Yeah.
That these claims of genocide. I know that the point has been made, but when you have population growth, you have pretty substantial population growth. I think it's like 50% over the last 2 years.
Mm.
That's also not a genocide. Like these things don't equate, and I think these people are just saying words um, because it's maybe part of this narrative that has built up in the anti-Israel whatever side this is on. But yeah, it doesn't track back onto to reality.
Yeah, it's just again, it's just like how am I supposed to take seriously people that make these claims? Like this is like the main claim of somebody like Finkelstein, who's like the main
Yeah.
person that the main scholar of pro-Palestinian voices, and he makes these ridiculous comparisons. Like, bro, like if you're failing this badly at such a basic level, then how am I supposed to take you seriously and everything else
Yeah.
that you say?
We play this one by Trevor Noah.
I honestly have to ask you this because I very let me ask you a question about, like on a human level. I honestly have to ask you this because I very seldom get angry on people's behalfs. But man, we haven't been able to stop talking about the CBS interview.
Wow.
We like, and I mean, when I say we, I don't just mean the people who make this podcast.
Yeah.
I mean like my friends,
Yeah.
people online,
Really?
people.
Yeah.
And
I'm totally off.
Oh, you really?
Yeah,
let
I'm
me tell you
totally
something.
off.
Oh, you're off?
Yeah, I'm completely off.
let me
Oh,
fill you
people are
in.
not happy about that.
I mean, I'm
Oh.
obviously hearing this from other people.
Yeah,
Friend,
yeah,
let
no.
me fill you in. Let me fill you in. I don't think you understand the shockwave that interview created, not because of what you said, but because of the way people felt like you were treated. Just the opening salve of that conversation.
Right.
And I'll never forget the question that you get asked, where I think it's Tony who says to you,
When I read the book, I imagine if I took your name out of it, took away the awards and the acclaim, took the cover off the book, the publishing house goes away, the content of that section would not be out of place in the backpack of an extremist.
yo, I sat there. I don't get flabbergasted by much.
Right.
I genuinely don't. I sat there and I was like, what? My first thought is, yes, but if you remove every context from everything, then everything could go anywhere. You know what I mean?
Right.
If you remove America's history and America's journey, America's this, then it's like, yeah, those people who fought against the British, they were terrorists.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean? You can call it like, the Boston Tea Party. That's terrorism.
Yeah.
If you remove the context, everything has no context. And
Right.
There's a lot there.
Did you watch the interview? I don't even know if I
Yeah, the
watched the
CBS
full
one?
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's just that guy Tony something something from CBS asking him hard questions. And apparently that's very bad, to ask, for a journalist to ask somebody difficult questions. But there is one thing I do want to say is that, I understand why, not the whole asking questions, like obviously that's fucking ridiculous and people need to get a grip. But I can understand why people would be upset that the guy did imply that the extremist thing. It's like, well, okay, I can disagree with Ta-Nehisi Coates, but I'm not going to call him an extremist. And, it's the implication is that, he's some kind of terrorist supporter. And so I get that criticism, but Ta-Nehisi Coates, again, isn't doing himself any favors when a couple days later he goes on the Trevor Noah podcast and pretty much doesn't justify it, but pretty much rationalizes terrorist-like behavior. And that's okay. That's the point that the Tony guy on the CBS interview was trying to make. When he read the book, he saw a bunch of justifications or rationalizations, whatever word you want to throw it, onto jihadist type behavior, and that's what he read. And again, I understand why, that rhetoric is like a little bit, inflamed. Like, why would you even say that? Because it kind of takes away from the real criticism and the real questions that he was asking him in that interview. And, all those questions were legit. But yeah, those are just my thoughts on it. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. I didn't watch the CBS interview. I heard the Fifth Column guys talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, again, he's just asking him about, like, well, why don't you mention the Intifada? And this is another thing that we haven't really talked about. So Ta-Nehisi Coates just wrote a book, about the Israel-Palestine conflict, but the way he does it is just like, dude, if you were to write a parody about it, like you would not believe it. You would say that there's no way that that's the way it actually happened because he thinks that he first he I fully admits that he knew nothing about the conflict, and then he goes to Israel for like 2 weeks and then decides to write a book on it. But they even ask him, like, did you go talk to any Israeli voices? Did you go talk to any Jewish? Did you go talk to any pro-Israeli? He's like, no, like he purposely avoided any type of pro-Israel voices and just strictly went to the Palestinian voices and then wrote a book on that 2 week experience. And it's just like, dude, you can't parody this shit. Like he clearly had a motive. Like what a coincidence that this is a man who's written his entire life about, black and white and the white oppresses the black and how the US is just this evil empire that's just going to forever oppress black people. And just what a coincidence that you go to this place in Israel in the Middle East and you just see exactly what you've been raised to see for your whole life and you just report on that and like you're just reconfirming your own pre-existing beliefs. It's just like this is a parody. Like I don't know if you saw that Ezra Klein clip where he asked him directly. He's like, "Why didn't you interview any voices, any Jewish voices, any pro-Israeli like type of what their argument is?" And he's like, "No, no, I didn't want to do that." Like it's like, bro, like you're not a reporter then. Like you're just an activist who's just trying to reconfirm his beliefs. Like you already set the goal in mind and you're going to just prove the belief that you already believe. You're not reporting, you're not investigating. You're just reconfirming your own beliefs just to suck yourself off and just say that, oh, well, this scenario of the black and white oppression that Jim Crow and all this, that's exactly parallel to what's happening in Israel right now. And it's just, again, you can't parody this shit. It's just like
Yeah.
if you were to like you can again you can have your disagreements about Israel. You can talk about the situation, about how fucked up everything is and on how, the West Bank and the settlements and okay, all of that's fine. But to do it the way that Ta-Nehisi did it in just the most retarded way possible. And it was just like you're so obviously going in there to just prove your pre-existing beliefs. It's just again, you can't parody this shit. It's just like the guy's not a reporter. The guy's just a like I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's an activist, and
Yeah, he's
I, I don't know. I don't know what people thought or what we were expecting from somebody like him, but I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if you wanna or keep going on this or what do you want?
Israel, Palestine, man, there's a lot to look at here. I hadn't
Yeah.
even seen this Trevor Noah interview.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It is what it is. I think that I mean we can go to another video if you want or something else, but I think we've kind of hit the Israel limit.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked a lot about it. I don't know. It is what it is. Like, I think ultimately Israel's winning this war, and I don't know where that's going to leave Gazans. I think Israel. This is another thing that I think about a lot. Like, not necessarily with a lot of these like Trevor Noah people and Ta-Nehisi Coates. I think they're just activists, and it's hard to know what influence they legitimately have. Like, it's hard to know what influence Dan Bilzerians have. Like, I know that our politics right now in the US is kind of down in the gutter, especially with the candidates that we have with like Donald Trump. I don't know if it's always been that way. I'm maybe not old enough to remember, but definitely right now it's a low point for politics. It's not the most intellectual. It's not, it's just kind of like, name calling and in the gutter. Like it's kind of slimy. But the point that I was trying to make is not necessarily like I don't know where what influence these people are exerting on our society, but look,
Yeah, I'm here.
oh, my screen just went dark. Um, oh, it's because it went into night mode. Stupid ass laptop. Um, sorry. What I was saying is, I don't know what influence they're exerting, but what I do know is that Israel um has a decision to make as to what the future holds for Gaza, and I don't know what they're thinking right now, but like now that the war seemingly is winding down, like where does that leave Israel, and what role do they have to play in the future of Gaza? Like, because I think that the U.S. asked itself the same question post Saddam and post, the war in Iraq in 2003, and I don't think Israel wants to repeat that. And there's a good argument to be made that you shouldn't occupy a nation, but at this point, like they've pretty much destroyed Gaza. Like I don't have up to date videos and photos and idea of what it's like on the ground, but from the pictures that I saw, it's going to be a long time before Gaza is operational. And so I think what we really should be thinking about and what Israel should be deciding right now is like, what does the future of Gaza look like? Like, what role do we have to play in that? And to kind of throw it back a little bit to American politics, it's like, these people, I think all they really accomplish is to make Israelis feel isolated. Like they all they really do is just make Israelis feel like no one else really has our back. Like American politics is fucking insane, and look at these political commentators coming out of the left and the right. Like they're all anti-Semites, and what could have been previously maybe a global conversation now just turns into Israel just going to do whatever the fuck it wants, and most likely it's just going to be Netanyahu if he does survive this next election, like just doing whatever he wants. And that I think if these people truly cared about Gazans and Palestinians, like that's kind of what they have to be asking themselves is like, how do I influence, or how do we go forward and like really try to get the best for Palestinians? And I don't know, I don't really know what the right answer is there, but it's definitely a question that
Yeah,
needs
I
to
mean,
be
I,
answered.
I think that the most likely scenario and the most plausible and I think the most moral is you have to involve these Sunni countries, especially with the population being Sunni. Um, you have to involve these semi-moderate countries like Saudi Arabia, like the United Arab Emirates, and use them, to help rebuild Gaza and to invest and to make sure that, a Hamas-like entity doesn't reemerge. And and yeah, I mean, I think there's ways of going around it, I mean, about it, but I think that, Israel is not going to willingly or just, flippantly just give up the keys to anybody, for a good cause, for good reason. And yeah, I mean, I hope we don't see anything type like a settlement or anything like that. There is some far right people like Ben Gvir who have mentioned that they want to take over Gaza, and I think that would be a big mistake for Israel, and that would just further isolate them in the world stage. And I I understand that. Honestly, I've reached a point where I understand that sympathy, where there's a lot of people in the quote unquote far right of Israel that say, not for religious reasons, but they say that nothing, we gain nothing by giving these people, full autonomy. Everywhere we pulled out of, we pulled out of Lebanon, southern Lebanon, and look what happened. We got Hezbollah. We pulled out of the West Bank and during the Oslo Accords, and look what happened. We got terrorist attacks and, Gaza, I mean, Hamas popping up there too. Look what happened in Gaza. We pulled out and we got Hamas. And so yeah, I think that because of those very clear examples that Israelis have, they're not gonna just want to hand the keys over to anybody. But I think what makes the most sense is to have an entity like Saudi Arabia or like the UAE, which is Muslim, which has more credibility than Israel, come in and try to work some type of, governing structure, government, something that will work for the Gazan people. And I think that would make the most sense
Yeah.
in my opinion, you know. And it's very likely too. I know I don't see it, you know. It's just it's funny too. It's funny seeing so many people, so many like all they do is just yell every day about on Twitter of like there's just like tweet after tweet. I'm like, dude, I don't get how some of these people do it. Like they must not have a life. They must not have things to do because it's just like nonstop tweeting and raging of oh Israel did this today and Israel did that today. And that's why at the end of the day, I think it's so important that people realize like so much of what people say and so much like it's just a facade to just get power. Like the reason why these people talk the way they do, and it's like they just want power at the end of the day, and they're mad that Israel has the power right now. So sorry, there's a plane going by. Can you still hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, they're mad that Israel has the power. They're mad that they're the bigger dogs, and they're mad that, dude, you're talking about a country that's not even, there's like how many Jews in the world? Like 15 million. There's like 9 million people that live in Israel and versus a billion Muslims, and they've been able to survive in like the worst possible place for the last, how many years. And it's a triumphalist story in that, if a lot of people should recognize it for what it is, the way that the Jewish people have overcome the worst types, like nothing compares to the Holocaust. Like that is the biggest victim, you know, story there is. And they overcame that. They built a country and they built, such a thriving place. And, instead of hating Muslim countries would do well by learning and we are seeing that we are seeing with places like Saudi Arabia, places like the UAE, where they are trying to modernize and they still have a lot of backward shit going on, but you know something's better than nothing. But yeah, we can only hope that it sucks too when somebody like MBD or what's his name, that's his name, right? The
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 prince
Crown
of
Prince of Saudi Arabia.
yeah. That's his nickname, right?
Yep.
MBD?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, somebody like him could have been that that example, He was this young, handsome guy and he wanted to reform and it sucked how he fucking threw away his image by murdering that poor fucking journalist. And and yeah, I mean he's the best the Muslim world has right now. It's just not saying much, but the fact that he is willing to go, I mean, modernize, the fact that he is, one of our closest allies, and the fact that, he has been in talks to make these peace accords with Israel, it's hopeful, but yeah, it just sucks how he threw away his reputation for murdering, some journalist that was like talking shit about him. Like, why?
Yeah.
Like, that sucks. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's better than the theocrats in Iran. That's for sure.
Yeah. That's a whole other discussion. That country. I don't know. I'm curious how Israel's going to respond. I haven't
Yeah,
seen too much of a response from them, but I mean, Israel, like you said, has been kicking ass. Like the number of names that I've seen drop is fucking insane. When they got Nasrallah, I was genuinely surprised. I
yeah.
didn't think that they were going to get him, but yeah. I don't know. Was there anything else you wanted to touch on?
No, but yeah. Next time, I think we could like react to. We could talk about like the presidency, the election, like some videos or something. Because I am, I think right now I'm like leaning towards Trump, but um, but I don't know, dude. Every day it changes for me because
Yeah. Actually,
Trump will do
the
something crazy and then I'll
yeah,
be like, oh, never mind. And then
yeah,
Kamala will say something retarded. I'll be like, oh, fuck, dude. I don't know if I could. put up with 4 years of
I
her.
know.
But then I'm like,
Kamala's
oh,
just
shit,
brain dead. Like Kamala, like I don't know. I think the only
yeah,
time I've been surprised or
the debate, yeah.
the debate, yeah,
The
where I was like,
debate
oh
was
shit,
like, oh
I can
wow,
see.
she's
Yeah,
good, but dude, it's like she's just so fake and
yeah,
she, she doesn't. It's just it's sad, dude. It's sad.
yeah,
The biggest fuck up was them not after they kicked out Biden, them not turning the convention into like a primary. That should
yeah,
have been that should have been in, and we would have gotten a way better candidate. But they felt like their hand was forced because, Kamala was this DEI fucking candidate. And I mean, they're
yeah.
bearing the fruits of
Which I
what
mean,
they
it,
saw.
it might work out for them. Kamala,
Yeah, I mean,
maybe
she's
it's like
still the
50-50 right
favorite.
now, but
Yeah,
she's
it's
still,
like
yeah.
50-50. But we'll see.
But I saw this, it'd be good to react to it, but it was a debate, not a debate, but a podcast that Barry Weiss did with former progressives that are voting for Trump. Um, and it's kind of the same thing. I don't know if you heard it, but it was a very similar thing. Like they just start defending his personality, his policy, like his faults. Like it just kind of quickly descends into the traditional why I'm voting for Trump type ideology versus I don't know other people that I've seen that are reluctantly voting for
Yeah,
Trump. But um, yeah, that won't be a good one to react to.
for sure. Well, yeah, let's try to do it next week.
Cool, sounds good. Um, yeah, well, thanks for listening, and I think I'll just post it on YouTube and
For sure.
go from
Send me
there. Yeah,
the link.
yeah, I will.
Yes.
All right,
All right, brother.
see ya.
Later.
See ya.